and the emotional resilience needed to succeed. Today, I want to share some key insights from my journey. So let's dive in. Stepping into ownership is an exciting leap, but I quickly realised that the real challenge isn't just running the business. It's also aligning the different individual visions of the owners, adapting to continual ambiguity, e.g. external environmental factors that can change overnight, which I'll talk a bit more about later, and handling the pressures that come with the responsibility for delivering business development, work delivery, and leading a rockstar workforce, throwing in ongoing work to keep the company on top of its game. I did due diligence in the traditional sense. I believed I understood the market position and the competitive landscape. I was already working in the business in a senior role. I hired independent legal and accounting advice like any good consultant and self-assessed what I would need to do to step up as an owner. What were the things that were going to be new to me and my development? This was becoming, for me, more proficient in selling myself into work and not just others. But no surprises, I did find hidden risks and challenges. For example, the cultural fit of my future partners. As a newly formed owner group, there was more than one of us who had new roles as owners, and there were some legacy challenges. In my view, it helps to deeply understand what your point of difference is as individuals in this new world order and your experience, and that's as owners. Not just a set of skills that you can rattle off, but deep understanding coupled with some really good concrete examples of work successfully worked on and the resulting impacts and results that these people that you now own a business with have delivered. There are advantages to buying into an established consultancy, and that is you get an established client base, brand recognition, and infrastructure. That is the systems and teams that are already in place. If the public sector is part of your target client audience, then access to AOG consultancy panels may necessitate an alliance with an existing organisation that has that access. Building may mean a slower start and requires the need to build IP, a solid foundational client base, and have sufficient cash flow resources for you to maintain your lifestyle whilst you build. For either option, you will need to find in yourself continually needing to consider the immediate revenue stream and how strong and or certain is it. In negotiating the right deal, I think you need to think about the structure of the model. Are you investing upfront once, or is there a slower burn with an earn-out model? What's the valuation based on? Are you paying for past success or future potential? My advice is definitely seek independent advice here without a doubt. It'll be worth every cent, even if you think you know all the ins and outs. Managing the seller relationships for a smooth transition can also be hard, as you negotiate the deal while providing a united front every day to clients, the workforce, and your community as you work through this process. I think it's really important to remember to acknowledge this to yourself and focus on what kind of relationship you want with that seller after the deal is done, as in itself that may help you temper how you show up during this time, because it's an amazingly emotional roller coaster ride negotiating through these big things. It's like buying a house. Navigating a multi-partner structure also taught me to balance different leadership styles in a whole new setting. Balancing authority in a way where you're unlikely to have worked with before as a new business owner. How was this going to change the ways of decision making and working that you've had with these individuals? And will you be dependent on whether you are partners with company portfolios between you? Will you choose to have a chief executive or a managing director role? How will you operate your business? For us, collaboration, setting aside egos, and mutually shared and aspirational visions for the business will all need to be required. That goes without saying. It's vital to understand also the owner's personal motivations for buying into the business. Do you have all new partners with all different mindsets? I didn't actually ask myself that question at the outset, and we've worked through this as we've formed, but I think you should. It's important to understand this, as this comes with you each day as you have to align on decision-making, your risk appetites, and commercial priorities. I recommend testing this with your other owners, in addition, for next level, what I call commercial savviness, and that's in an owner persona, if you will. You may find that some are much more astute and others are learning on the go, and knowing this and what it means for your business will help you all be far more successful as you navigate this new ownership model together. It will come as no surprise to you that you also need to handle conflict and difficult conversations with each other in one conversation before then providing a united front and strong partnership in the next. You need to learn how to disagree well, how to hold the mirror up to each other, and how to support each other when it's needed, on what needs to be agreed and also where you just need to cut through and get a decision. So for me, I asked myself, what will this look like for me? How do I show up? And how does that mean for fellow owners? And one of the questions I think would be really useful is to take time to think, what role do I naturally take in this new ownership? Am I a visionary? Am I an executor? Am I the peacemaker? Am I the risk mitigator? And how does that impact decision-making and how we show up in those meetings? So just to quickly recap that first slide. For me, I found establishing clear decision frameworks early being really key to understanding my fellow partners and how we were navigating this journey. I think we need to recognise and respect our different strengths. That goes without saying, but we also need to regularly check in on alignment, not just the financials, but the visions and aspirations over time and the softer stuff, especially as we start to navigate our journey and mature as an ownership model. As part of your due diligence and agreeing your aspirations for these future conversations, I think you also need to look at what your views are around expanding your services and capturing more work and market share, or whether you're maintaining a very specific niche, whether you're interested in investing in new hires or keeping a very lean team, prioritising revenue now versus long-term brand value and deep growth. My initial aspirations had to be redirected to support the needs of maintaining sustainability within the current environment, as I bought in September 2023. The government slowdown on consultancy spending began in October of that year, although we had seen a slow start from August. And we all know what that has meant for our industry as consultants. My learnings will be like yours, that key personal and relationship connections have been needed to be kept very successful to meet our business development needs now more than ever. And strong individual credentials with well-articulated proven impacts and outcomes for our clients that we have delivered in the past is just the first step in the door. Clearly articulating who, how, when, what, with deep experience has led to us winning work in far greater percentages than what we'd seen in the past, where you still were able to win the opportunity off the back of your company's credentials. I think there's a real role for boutique consultancies, and they can and should demonstrate how they can be competitive here, as everyone in the team should be able to articulate what each other can do and be better value for money compared to others. And being able to demonstrate, for example, in boutique consultancies, owners and partners are often on the tools and are actually delivering the work, facing the client on a daily basis. And in my experience, we don't charge the same costs as some multinational consultancies that have to support their global overhead networks. We have had to, like many others, shift our focus from sole government reliance to diversifying revenue streams, sectors and products, moving beyond reliance where we've had to look to where else can value be created. The type of work customer buying has changed, and that's meant we've had to change to meet our client needs. We've quickly had to learn strategies for staying competitive when budgets tighten, and that has led us to focus on small, quick wins for fixed prices to showcase our work as a new ownership model, giving clients a quick off-ramp before they spend too much money, and then delivering the good so that they don't off-ramp, no surprises. So after surviving the first year, That doesn't mean I feel that we've nailed all these aspects. I don't think what necessarily has worked in the past will continue to keep working as the market keeps changing. So we have to keep evolving. However, carving time out as owners, even when you're busy firefighting, does need to happen. And you need to find out what really works for you. Maybe that's an early morning session, like for our partners, or it's an hour to once in a while over a weekend. As Nike says, we just have to do it. The shift from working in the business to working on the business requires learning, trust, and authority. Balancing that innovation aspect on what has to change with continuity and what to keep. As a new owner, you need to be really thoughtful about. I, for one, am always like a boundless dog with boundless energy, and we have to respect some of the legacy that you have purchased. You need to earn respect from legacy staff whilst bringing fresh ideas and balancing your aspirations with financial sustainability and building a new strong team and culture, because you are a new company. So what are you doing to retain those key staff, and how will you manage any resistance to change are all good questions to be asking yourself. With different partners comes different risk appetites, and you need to find common ground. And as you know, there are different types of risk, and knowing which of those are worth taking is important. I think you need to learn to consider that not all risks are threats, and some are opportunities in disguise. And you need to understand how to make smart commercial decisions together in lean times. Knowing your value in such a cost-sensitive market and what pricing strategies and associated profitability has been really key to us deeply understanding our operating model and avoiding the race to the bottom of client rates. I think you also need to then have strategies for bouncing back if you do have a bad decision, and you need to learn from it. And that's holding up that mirror once again. At one point last year, we could not agree on the cash flow forecast for the company, and I, for one, felt extremely isolated despite being a chartered accountant. I felt in my gut that we could end up in a dire situation without taking some action. We sought independent advice, both to gain an agreed financial outlook, but also to facilitate a mutually agreed set of decisions for how we were going to agree the way forward. Without this intervention, I definitely believe we would be in a far worse financial position today. After stabilising the business, we are now focused on growing our business and back to that good old chestnut business development. And that ongoing focus, you need to keep continuing to nurture these relationships to keep the pipeline strong. If there have been any significant changes in what you have been offering, then refreshing your market strategy are also required, as well as new credentialing to reflect the new strengths of the owners and expertise and the workforce that you bring with you. Make sure you are clear here what your strengths are in the current market, and they may be different to the company you bought. Choose to highlight and nurture these and expand these as you see fit. And focus, I believe, on deepening your expertise and experience here. Choosing this right pathway and positioning you as indispensable with your strengths, I think will see you will see clients buying your services even when they're cutting back. But once again, this is all my observations, and really happy to be challenged on that by others. I'd now like to talk about the weight of ownership and dealing with imposter syndrome, feeling like you're figuring it out as you go and doubting at times your ability to lead. Don't do what I have done in one or two instances and frozen when someone asks you what you do. You need to be able to describe what you do with more specificity than we're a management consultancy. You need to always be able to point to your strengths and the successful work you have done, your insights, your expertise, and your experience. As I mentioned earlier, all owners need to be able to understand how to sell each other deeply. I think no one prepares you truly for the weight of leadership and the isolation as an owner distinct from your workforce. That emotional and financial weight of ownership is really key to understanding what that heavy weight feels like 24/7, and it is 24/7. It's about customer satisfaction, workforce satisfaction, getting successful new business development and cash flow considerations. All of that is on the go, as well as delivering high value and impact work to your clients. What do you do when these challenges arise? My advice is simply don't stay or become isolated. Find the right support network. I rely on strong personal connections, fellow consulting owners, other business owners, and strong professional connections, acknowledging with each other that it is tough when it's tough. I also think you need to make peace with uncertainty, as business ownership is never safe, as I have learned. The mental load, constantly thinking about cash flow, staff, and strategy is omnipresent, and you need to be able to park it. Accept that change is always around the corner, and you'll have the ability to be able to adapt accordingly. I'd love to hear your stories about how any of you who've been through a business ownership, how you've learned to adapt and dealt with this. You also need to be able to recognise early signs of burnout, or the possible signs of burnout in you and yourself and others. Create boundaries between work and personal life, even when it feels impossible, becomes even of more necessity. The importance of taking holidays, even if it's a long weekend, as work can consume you if you let it. And I can easily fall into that trap and have done so. I can easily work day in and day out, as there's always something else to do. And we've had to all friendly intervene with each other over various times to stop us falling over in the longer term. For me, this has been the biggest surprise, that omnipresent mental weight of ownership. It stays with you weekends, nights, and even holidays. So managing that weight is as important as managing the business itself. My tactic is simply to talk about this with my peers and learning to live a life where I can park that. It also helps that I love reading, so I can distract myself. I'm learning to accept that I am imperfect. I will make mistakes, but I ensure that I learn fast. So summing up all of this, what are the lessons in essence from the first year? What do I wish I knew before I took that first leap? Trust takes time. Staff and clients won't immediately buy into the new leadership. You'll need to be resilient, adaptable, and trust your instincts and prove your worth. Cash flow is everything. Profitability means nothing if there's no cash in the bank. Partnerships or ownership models need some structure. Even with shared values, clarity in roles is critical. Growth isn't always the answer. Sometimes survival and efficiency matter more. Your mental health affects your leadership. If you burn out, the business suffers. Or if you're worried, close associates can read the vibes coming off you. Actively work on how you show up, even if you don't mean to be that person. And I'm still on that journey. I think there's also the importance of celebrating small wins, because there'll always be setbacks, and being really clear what everyone brings to the partnership in terms of experience, expertise, their risk appetites, and their motivations. What incentivizes them to be successful? Learn how to navigate shifts. That's both in teams, markets, and also personal mindset shifts. Overcoming imposter syndrome by being brave, keep putting yourself out there, and knowing that if you keep going, you will win. A new client, a new service, a new methodology, new insights. Ownership just isn't about strategy, it's about mindset. I am convinced that businesses that thrive are the ones led by owners who can navigate all of these things: pressure, uncertainty, their own self-doubt, and they still be able to grab the opportunities out there. Finally, accept that there's never a perfect time or complete certainty in any business decision. My reflection is that despite all of the above, I don't regret becoming a business owner. I have learnt so much, and those of you who know, I've adopted the following words from Robin Sharma of the 5 a.m. Club fame. Your greatest growth and progress lies in the area of your greatest discomfort. And that, I think, sums up my first year as a business owner. Anyway, enough about me. love to open up the floor and have observations, questions, thoughts. Yeah,
Thanks,
you.
Tania. As if anybody wants to take their microphone off and ask Tania any questions, absolutely, please go ahead. I've got questions, of course I have, but open the floor to anyone else first.
Yes, I did, Dave. And Dave, your laugh, because remember I was thinking of you when I was talking about the frozen instance when I couldn't tell you what we did. Dave was the recipient of one of those instances.
Good stuff, yeah, thank you.
Oh, Rosaline, thank you so much. I think you're awesome too, by the way. Yeah.
So, Tania, related to that, probably reflecting on some bits that you put in right at the beginning of the presentation, we talked about motivations. You said, be clear on your motivations for buying into a business. What were your motivations? And kind of related to Brett's question, really, did you ever think about what would happen at the end? How it would, well, is that what you went in with a multi-year idea?
Yes, so that was quite interesting. So I think my motivation to answer the first part of that question was I have worked in a lot of consultancies and I've bummed, in and out and gone into the public sector, gone into the not-profit, come back into consulting land. And I'd always had a dream of actually owning my own business in some shape or form. And the work that I do with TBL just adds value, which I was not getting working for a private consulting, big consulting company where you're just delivering values to the shareholders, which is fine. But actually, if I want to be doing that, I can deliver that to myself. I also like to shape directions. I have opinions and thoughts that anyone who knows me will not be surprised to hear that. And so kind of love being the shaper and creator of my own destiny in a way. So that's where, for me, those aspirations of my fellow owners is really important. Yes, we need to make a profit. I have teenagers that I need to support, and a mortgage and all of that thing. So there is a financial driver without a doubt, but it's also more for me. It's not just about the money. It's about the work I can do. So it's the challenges. If I wanted just to sit and no offense, accountants, but if I just want to sit in a job, do month-end processing, do that year after year, I could have stayed being an accountant. Could have ticked that box, but that's not what I thrive on. I thrive on really interesting work. That's why I love working for particularly the public sector and not-for-profits, the impacts, the outcomes, the client outcomes that you can drive, just shape our world in such big ways. And to me, that's about leaving a legacy. And I think that's really important. I like to think that I will leave a legacy in my life. I don't need to be remembered for anything, but it's just, that's what I would like to do. I'm trying to do that as a mum, not sure how successful, because anyone who's got teenagers will know that what teenagers think of their parents. And I get told that very regularly.
And then the second bit then.
Yeah, so the second bit.
Exit. Are you already thinking about it, or did you?
Yeah, we did talk about it. I don't think we probably talked about it enough. I don't think, I also think I'm actually deeply grateful that we had such a hard first year. We would never have got the clarity on our business and the way forward and what that looks like and a shared understanding of that, I don't think, without lean times. I think you could hide quite a bit in the good times. So that was really great. And we had 4 partners when I started, and some of you might have read between the lines that we now have 3. And partly that's about what the market was buying and is buying in the skill sets. So there's something around as an owner being really clear about who's buying you, what are they buying from you, and making sure that need is in the market, because you are creating that value in your organisation. And for us, it was one of our partners just that skill sets weren't getting bought, and probably ownership in the partnership was quite different to what she thought. And I think sometimes, you know, people, how should I put it? I think as an owner, you think you've got you are a decision maker, but actually what does that look like as you show up with each other? And I think that's the thing that really needs to be tested. And like I say, I thought I did all the right things in terms of, you know, read all the textbooks, talk to people, got independent advice, but it's actually those deeper values-driven things. And we had a values-driven conversation, but it's actually how does that play out in reality? And maybe you just never know. I mean, yeah, maybe you just don't know. And that's just something you have to go on. What I would say is I think you have to be in it for the long term. I think if you really want to deliver long-term value and change, it's not a short-term gig. But I'll be interested in others' thoughts.
Yeah.
Two-way street.
Well, I certainly think, as you talked about wanting to be a shaper and creator and to leave a legacy, I imagine those things resonate with almost everybody, if not everybody on the call to some extent. Yeah,
and one of our sellers was, been in the business for over 20 years, so that's real long-term value. I'm much older than what she was when she started the business. I feel like I might be decrepit in 20 years' time, but you never know. I might get, AI might create an AI version of me.
I would expect so. Yes.
Be afraid, people. Be afraid.
Does anyone else have any comments or anything else for Tania?
Can I pick on someone?
Yeah, of course you can. Don't know what they'll think of that, but
Well, I'll start with you, Dan.
Okay.
Given your role as setting up this beautiful association, what are your insights on boutique consultancy ownership in the current climate from the people that you talk to?
Whoa, what a big question. I wish you'd have warned me about that one. But so
where's the fun in that, Dan?
Absolutely right. So what do I think? I will immediately reflect back on what I just said there. I think boutique consultancies tend to have purpose, and they're very clear on that. They tend to be value driven as well. And I mean, values driven and principles driven.
They should be value driven as well.
They should be value driven, absolutely, for their customers. But I'm thinking in terms of how they operate and the decisions they make, they tend to be based on principles. The boutique consultancies are all specialists in what they do as well. So I think the boutique environment, the ecosystem that we have in New Zealand kind of relies on those 3 or 4 things. Now, there is a temptation, and I've been through this, where after a while you go, well, we've got 60 people. Do we really want, what's next? Is it 160? Yeah. And then if you move through that scale and you move beyond what you've got, some of those core elements start to be challenged. The decisions you make become more financial, that you have to be much firmer with your cash flow, and there's just it becomes a very financially driven organization after a while. And I think that's kind of my key reflection on what I'm seeing in the market at the moment, on what I see with the people we've got. And that's partly why any business owner really probably needs to think about what happens if they get very big as well, bigger than they would expect. How would they deal with that? Does that take them away from their core? There are plenty of organizations which just stop growing because they don't want to be any bigger, and that's seems to me perfectly more than acceptable. It's to be commended, I think, understanding that and not being driven by the lure of the dollar. But that's me in particular. Everybody their own, which is why we have a New Zealand Boutique Consultancy Association and not a US Boutique Consultancy Association, which would be a very different thing.
Yeah, interesting. Okay, I'm now going to pick on someone else if someone doesn't have a question for me. Awesome. So, Dave, you might be surprised that it's you.
I'm gonna. I was wondering, as you were leading into that before, if I should turn my camera off.
And then leave, yes.
Yeah. What? Sorry, I couldn't answer. I was just stepped away from my desk for a minute. Go
Oh,
ahead.
sorry to put you on the spot,
Tanya. No, it's all good.
Dave, but I'd be really interested on your reflections on leadership, risk-taking and mental resilience, some of the themes that I've talked about, and whether you've got any comments or observations.
Yeah, so what resonated most for me when you were talking about that is the absolute need as a business owner to have that work-life balance. Like,
Yeah.
How do you put the cell phone and the laptop down and just not be accessible, right? You've got to put the time and effort into you personally and to your relationships outside work and your family and stuff like that, right? So it is, I think it's a greater discipline, even if you were the CEO of a company that you didn't own. As the CEO, you can kind of go, okay, this is what they pay me to do, and step away. As the owner of the business, to my mind, it is 24/7. You are, I just had the kids down at the park and swings and slides and ice creams, and I was thinking about the stuff that we could do and our next go-to-market strategy and so on, and that's the reality of life. So, that's the big one for me. In terms of the environment and the challenges, I'm not a sucker for punishment, but I like that. There's so many sayings. When the going gets tough, the tough get going. It's not a challenging environment. It's a great opportunity. If without everything that's going on in the government sector and the economy and that fella somewhere over in the northern hemisphere somewhere that seems to be influencing us on a day-to-day basis. I mean, all of that stuff I kind of love because I can sit down with self-reflection. Actually, I'll share with you, my dad owned and operated his own business for most of his working life, and I only found out later in life that he would consistently take a 1 hour break. Right, so 12 until 1. If he didn't have to attend a lunch with somebody, that was his time. And he would get in his car and drive down the road to the beach or the botanical gardens, and that was his mental health check.
Oh, nice.
So that sort of stuff just allows you to kind of reflect back and go, what really matters and how do you get things done? That'd be my key answer. Thanks for the question.
No, that's all right. Thanks, Dave. I was just telling Dan before everyone else joined, I had a mama moment last night as I rushed in from work and my son had snapped his braces wire. And let's just say I had to cut braces wire. So that was the challenge of last night. And I'd been thinking up until I arrived at that front door about all the things about my day, and honestly had to forget it just like that.
And how did your son react to mum with a pair of pliers?
Let's just say there was blood and paracetamol and then bribery with lemonade.
That's it. But that's the stuff that's important, right? And, I think most of us do jobs, whether we're owning the business and invested in the business or just fulfilling a role. Most of us do stuff because we want to be of value and we want to feel like we're contributing something, delivering an outcome. If our whole motivation in life is to put money into our bank account, then I think that we're going to lose our way. Anyway, good presentation. Thanks, Tania.
That's all right. Thanks, Dave, and thank you for being such a willing volunteer. Really,
I knew it was coming.
No.
Time for one more, I think. But otherwise, if there's, we've got until 1:45. If not,
any observations? Does anyone have any reflections of their own? No. Maybe everyone's hungry.
Indeed. Well, look, fantastic. Thank you very much, Tania. I really do appreciate you taking the time to develop that presentation and be so open about everything. I think that's really good. So
yeah, on that actually, Dan, really happy if people want to reach out and have a chat. I really value that, people listening to me. So that's an open invitation to you all. Really happy to connect and have a chat. And even not just now, but in a couple of months' time, if you hit a tough spot, reach out and pick up the phone. I'm a good listener. I'm not just a talker.
Thank you, Tania.
Yeah,
I know.
that's right.
Look, thank you very much, everyone, for attending, and hopefully we will see you at the next one. And yeah, see you later.
Ka kite.